Homework 8, Section 7.3, Simple Interest, Video 1. In the previous video, we reviewed how to convert between percents, decimals, and fractions, and we also reviewed how to do basic percent problems. Beginning in this section, we're actually going to incorporate some of those rules as we explore something called simple interest. Before we get into what's actually simple interest, I think it's worth defining what we mean by interest in general. If one person loans somebody else some money and they're expected to pay it back, if you're friends, you're probably just going to ask for the amount that you loaned. For example, if I loaned you $100, I'm going to expect you to pay me back the $100. But if you're in the business of making loans or investing money, then there is a fee for borrowing that money, or the fee added on if you're investing money, and that fee is called interest. For example, if you borrow money from a bank, when you repay it, you don't repay the exact amount that you borrowed. You also have to pay back interest based on how much you borrowed, how long you borrowed it, what interest rate they're giving you, and what type of interest they're calculating. Simple interest is just interest that's calculated one time at the beginning of a loan or an investment. From this point forward, I will probably be saying loan each time, but whether or not it's a loan or investment depends upon which direction the money is going. For example, if the money is going from the bank to me with the intention of repaying it back, that's a loan. However, if the money goes from me to the bank and then eventually back to me, that's an investment. I'm investing my money so that I can have more later. And if you're wondering how banks make money, it's really easy. The interest rate that they charge for loaning money is greater than the interest rate they pay for you investing your money. So the difference between the two is where banks make their profit. Nice work if you can get it, but you have to have a chunk of money in order to actually serve as a bank. But I digress. Simple interest is interest calculated once at the start of a loan or an investment. And the rule for calculating simple interest is actually pretty straightforward. I equals capital P times R times T. Capital I is the interest earned. So it's how much you're paying the bank for the privilege of borrowing the money, or how much the bank is paying you for the privilege of them borrowing your money. Capital P is the principal, P-R-I-N-C-I-P-L-E, I believe. And that's the amount of money that you borrow or the amount of money that you invest. It's the initial amount, if you will. Lowercase r is the annual interest rate. And most of the time, interest rates are given annually. If you're going to borrow money, you may have to pay 12% annual interest. Or if you're going to invest money, the bank might pay you 3% annual interest. And the T is called the term, but it's just the time of the loan. Are you borrowing this money for 1 year? Are you borrowing it for 18 months? Are you borrowing it for 90 days? And vice versa if it were an investment. So it's a pretty straightforward formula. You just multiply how much you're borrowing times your annual interest rate times the length of the investment or the loan, and that will give you the simple interest. Quick comment about the annual interest rate. Because it's an interest rate, it should be given to you as a percent. Looking for my red marker, don't seem to see it. However, you don't do math with percents, ever. You do math with decimals. Percents are good for describing things. They're horrible for doing math with. So when you have your annual interest rate, but you're using your formula, make sure that your interest rate is a decimal, and make sure that your time is in years. And I forgot to write that here. It's the time of the loan in years. So what do we do if it's not years? Well, we'll cross that bridge in a moment. So it's a pretty simple formula. Now, there is one other concept involved with simple interest, and it's called future value. Future value is the value of a loan after interest is added. So for example, let's say I invest $1,000 and then I earn $100 interest. Then the future value of that investment would be $1,100. Or if I were borrowing $1,000 and I have to pay $100 interest, then the future value of that loan is $1,100. The variable for future value is a capital A. If I invented math, I would call future value FV. Call me crazy. And the relationship between future value, interest, and principal is pretty straightforward. The future value is just the principal, which is how much money you start with, plus the interest, how much money you accumulate or owe after the end of the loan or the investment. So the interest is calculated separately, gets added onto the principal to create the future value, or rather to calculate the future value. In the next few examples, we'll look at some calculations and some issues that can arise, such as what if your time is not given in years, what if your interest rate is a mixed number, and things like that.